coming up. Leonard Peltier has his first parole hearing in a decade. We have the latest. In New Mexico, Angel Charlie is running for a seat in the state Senate. And a tribe in Idaho is prioritizing education. Next on the ICT Newscast.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
Support for the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez comes from the Arizona PBS studios in Phoenix at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communications at Arizona State University.
Amidawahopa. Thank you for joining us. I am Aaliyah Chavez. We start today in Oregon, where the federal government is claiming it is not responsible for a BIA officer who raped a woman while on duty. Bureau of Indian Affairs police officer Dana Michael Bullcoming pleaded guilty in a criminal case arising from his rape of a woman who had called for his help. At a hearing earlier this month in a related lawsuit, a government attorney claimed the United States bears no responsibility for the officer's actions because he didn't rape the woman on behalf of the U.S. government. According to advocates who showed up to court to support the plaintiff and filed an amicus brief on the lawsuit, the case has implications for the epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous relatives. Activists who wanted to stop the construction of a $10 billion energy transmission line had their claims dismissed by the government. Native tribes and environmentalists sought to protect the historic, cultural, and religious significance of the lands in Arizona's San Pedro Valley. That was from a project that will carry wind-generated electricity from New Mexico to customers in California. Last week, Judge Jennifer Zips issued a ruling stating that the plaintiffs were years too late in bringing their challenge and that the Bureau of Land Management had fulfilled its obligations to identify historic sites and cultural resources for the project. In April, the Tonawandam Nation vowed to pursue all legal avenues, and environmentalists say an appeal is likely. We turn now to basketball, where Standing Rock citizen Kyrie Irving is shining bright in the NBA Finals. Irving, whose Dallas Mavericks are facing the Boston Celtics for the league title, has been quite visible, sharing his culture on a national stage. He dons special sneakers with fringe that give off a moccasin vibe and has burned sage before games. One educator spoke to ICT, hailing his actions.
It's important, especially for American Indian students, young people, to see that, you can be proud to be American Indian. You can be confident knowing that, there's other people, especially on the big stage of society and the mainstream society, that are implementing and incorporating our practices on that bigger level.
In Florida, a parole hearing was held Monday for Indigenous activist Leonard Peltier. Convicted for the 1975 killings of 2 FBI agents in South Dakota, he spent most of his life in prison. Now at age 79, his health is failing, and supporters are calling for his compassionate release. Amelia Schaefer has been following this story for us, and she joins us now. Welcome, Amelia.
Thank you for having me.
What is the latest in this parole hearing?
So yesterday there was a parole hearing held in Florida for Peltier. It lasted about 7 hours, and there was information coming in from both sides, evidence, arguments, lots going on. Right now we're waiting to hear what the parole board or parole examiner will decide, and they have up to 21 days to do so. So it could be quite some time before we hear a decision. And it's likely that they are going to take that 21 full days.
We've heard that this could be Leonard Peltier's last shot at freedom, but tell us why that is.
So he is older. He's 79. He's been in prison maximum security for a great portion of his life. He has diabetes. He's suffering from some complications from diabetes, and his team has been struggling to bring in some help to get him checked out, get him the medical help that he needs. So, what they're concerned about is that this could be his last shot at going home. This could be his last shot at freedom. Because, I mean, that age for anyone is a good feat, but someone who's been in maximum security for that long with health conditions is pushing it. This could be the last time he sees a parole hearing or he makes it to a parole hearing. He was concerned he would even make it to this hearing to begin with.
And if he was granted parole, what would next steps be?
So when I spoke to his team, they mentioned that he does have property in Turtle Mountain in North Dakota, which is his home community. So he would likely return home. He has grandkids, and I'm pretty sure great grandkids at this point. So he would likely finish out his sentence among his family and his community up in North Dakota.
And of course, you said that they could take the 21 days to issue a decision, but what could we anticipate between now and a decision, and how would we hear that decision?
So I've been speaking with his team with the ad hoc committee, and they've been giving me good information on that. His lead attorney's been talking with me. So likely they'll be giving me updates throughout this time. I'm waiting today to hear from an update on how they feel that the hearing went, if they feel that it went well. And then between that time, I know here in South Dakota, we had a lot of people hold prayer ceremonies for him. There was a group that held a ceremony in Bear Butte, which is one of the sacred sites here in the Black Hills. And then I spoke with a woman in Phoenix who had been holding a prayer ceremony. She was actually at the Jumping Bull Ranch when everything happened in 1975. So I'm assuming there will be a lot of different prayer vigils and prayer ceremonies held between now and then, and a lot of people really hoping that Leonard can go home.
We've heard a lot of support from a lot of Native people, but tell us a little bit about the organizations and sort of the high-profile names who have supported him over the years.
So a lot of people that were formerly involved with his case when it happened in the 70s, 80s, so on, have come out and spoken in support of him and said that they regret what happened. And then I know Nelson Mandela also had something to say about Leonard back when everything went down. And there's just been people all over the United States speaking out for him, requesting that he go home. Here in Rapid City, the Indian Collective, which is a major organization, Nick Tilson has spent most of his life fighting for Leonard's freedom. So there's just been across the board a lot of different advocates hoping and praying for him to go home.
We've heard the rhetoric so often over the years that he's a political prisoner. That's what so many of his supporters say. But tell us what that means in this context.
So in this context, I've heard that used to describe the fact that the other individuals at the compound when it happened had been excused in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and then Peltier's trial was moved to Fargo, North Dakota, where he had a much different experience than they did in Iowa. So a lot of people that I've spoken to, Nick Tilson, Jean Roach, who was there when everything happened, I spoke with her yesterday. They felt that there was someone who needed to go down for what happened in Pine Ridge, and Leonard was their last opportunity to do so. I mean, throughout this whole time, people have been saying he's a political prisoner and have felt that way about the situation because he was the last opportunity for someone to face penalties for those two deaths.
Something we've also heard over the years is for various presidents to pardon him, which essentially would mean that he could go home. We know that the Biden administration today is very busy, of course, but have we heard anything from Joe Biden or Vice President Kamala Harris on this matter?
No, not to my knowledge, and I don't anticipate that we will hear anything. As you said, they are very busy, and this is also a very high-profile case. When the advocates I spoke to also don't think that's likely to happen, and they're trying to keep their hope up in general, but this parole hearing very likely could be his only shot at getting out, as it doesn't seem that a pardon may be on the table.
Well, Amelia Schaefer will continue to follow this story very closely. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Community organizer Angel Charlie is hoping to advocate for Native issues in the New Mexico State Senate next year. She is the presumed winner for the District 30 race after winning the Democratic nomination in the June primary, and with no Republicans currently running for the general election. According to Charlie's campaign, she would be the first Native American person to hold that seat after a successful win in November. ICT's Paris Wise spoke to Charlie to hear more about her efforts and work across different issues. Take a look.
So, Angel Charlie, you recently won your primary race for New Mexico State Senate District 30. How does that feel, and what has the journey been like so far?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm still absorbing the news. It was a really hard fought race. And so it's just, I've been taking it in and accepting all of the excitement from others. And, I think it's going to be a couple more days or weeks until it actually settles in. This was always bigger than me. This was about the community, and it's a real honor to be able to do this for the 5 tribes that are in Senate District 30.
What made you want to take that next step and put yourself out there on this scale?
Well, I've been an advocate and an activist and organizer for as long as I can remember. And when I started running the organization Coalition to Stop Violence Against Native Women, we really got into policy advocacy. And we were one of 4 organizations that codified the Indian Child Welfare Act for the state of New Mexico a couple of years ago when it was under attack at the Supreme Court. And it was through that journey that really made this seem more possible. So that was like the minute I was like, we can do this. We can have policy that meets our needs, that actually meets community where they are, if we have people inside of that system that are willing to do the work. I've long believed that we have to be outside, organizing, protesting, holding the system accountable. We have to have people on the inside too. And so this was just a deeper commitment to that belief.
Who are some other female leaders you admire, and what are your views on more and more Indigenous women rising in leadership roles, especially in government positions?
I mean, Secretary Holland is, I think, the person who I think of when I think who made who made this seem possible, right? Who made running for office seem like something the rest of us could do. We could see ourselves in these places. And she reached out when I announced. She called the morning after to say congratulations. And it's those kinds of moments that make me feel so humbled and excited about the possibility about being in this position. And I'm not the only Native woman who ran in the state of New Mexico. I actually share overlapping districts with Michelle Paulina Beta. And so several of the tribes in both of our districts will now be represented by 2 Native women for the first time in history. And that's huge, being from the communities that we serve, and having a voice in the state legislature is so important to our community's ability to thrive and live well.
You were also on the New Mexico State Task Force for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Relatives. What would you say the current efforts are in protecting Indigenous women, and what more needs to be done?
Yeah, well, we've got jurisdictional loopholes that we'll continue to look at and examine and figure out how to make these systems work with each other and work better. There's chronic underfunding for years into our communities and into solutions that are really community led. And the biggest, the last kind of big issue around murdered and missing Indigenous people is systemic racism. And with this run being in this position now, we're starting to address that and shift the systems to, again, meet the needs of our communities.
You're also the current executive director of Illuminative, which is a female-led organization working to uplift Native representation in media. I would love to know, in your opinion, how can media be used in a positive way not just to educate non-Indigenous people, but to really impact those back home?
Well, it's all about stories. Our stories need to be told by us. The content needs to be Indigenous led, and it really empowers our representation and our own visibility. And so, from both of these vantage points, both as a Senate candidate, Senate elect, and as the executive director of Illuminative, I understand how important stories are to changing culture. And when we change culture, we change the circumstances for good policy to move forward.
Well, speaking of change, Angel Charlie, what do you see for the future of Indian country?
I mean, so many possibilities, right? We are now being in places and spaces that were never meant for us. And I have been imagining my ancestors, watching over me this entire time. And I believe that when so many of us step forward and that we prioritize healing in a bunch of different ways. We do it for our future generations, but we're also healing back toward those who came before us. And so, I mean, that's really what I'm focused on and excited about is that the more space that we take up, the more we heal our communities.
Angel Charlie, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Paris.
Officials from the U.S. Department of Agriculture say they have worked over the last 3 years to listen to tribal concerns and act on them. Now, native ag producers are noticing. One told ICT, "I used to think Obama was good for natives, and then came Biden." Our Stuart Huntington has more.
When the Biden administration's Department of Agriculture held its first tribal consultations, things got a little, well, testy.
The first year of the administration, I believe that folks had really felt unheard before this administration came in, and folks came clamoring to be heard. There was a lot of heated discussions.
But at the recently concluded consultations this spring, the tone was quite different.
One of the main themes that I walked away with, anyways, was how much they had changed over the last 4 years from the first year of the administration to this year.
The change in tone perhaps reflecting changes made on the ground.
USDA, the Biden administration has made great strides to engage with tribes and tribal producers across many facets of the government.
Federal regulations have hindered or sidelined tribes and native producers. USDA officials working to alter that have put in place new policies, such as requiring infrastructure projects like power grid construction on tribal lands get tribal consent, leveling the playing field for native producers in the grazing land permitting process, boosting tribal land use decision input by signing more than 180 tribal Forest Service co-stewardship agreements, and bringing indigenous meats like bison and caribou into the USDA grant and commodities programs.
They put out this program so that tribes have the ability to process their own buffalo and then distribute that to their membership. That's a huge win for tribes and for the tribal members who are receiving those products.
And more changes are coming.
We started with buffalo. We're moving into fish this year. We're launching USDA's Native Fish Initiative and hoping to do a better job in incorporating salmon and other seafood and fish into our work and our commitment in the conservation space there as well. And a second one is seeds. We've heard from Indian country the importance of maintaining indigenous seeds, and we are leaning into better partnership in propagating indigenous plants.
Nobody thinks the work is done.
There's still a lot of skepticism.
Or that history can be ignored.
There's still a past that needs to be considered.
But progress is being noted just the same.
I tell you what, I thought Obama was good for natives. The Biden administration, I can't think of an administration that has actually truly listened and then said, all right, how do we do it? And, those are big things.
Stuart Huntington, ICT News.
A ohe pau ka ike I ka halau ho'okahi. A ohe pau ka ike I ka halau ho'okahi. All knowledge is not taught in the same school. A ohe pau ka ike I ka halau ho'okahi. All knowledge is not taught in the same school.
A tribe in southwest Idaho is putting education at the forefront of its priorities. ICT's Shirley Snavy spoke to Jessica James, the education program manager for the Shoshone-Bannock tribes.
I oversee all of education for our tribes in regards to adult, basic education, GED, short-term trainings, apprenticeship programming, higher ed, and graduate students. I collaborate a lot with our K-12 tribal youth manager, and we do a lot of projects in our community. I do a lot of outreach to parents and community parent committees, and work a lot with the universities and colleges to get reduced or free tuition for our tribal members. Our thing is just, getting the youth ready for college and college readiness. We have seen in the state of Idaho a 3% increase in the go-on rates statewide for our Native American youth, but we definitely want to try to get that to increase to a better number. We are doing FAFSA Friday workshops with our tribes to prepare them to do their financial aid, and we bring in a lot of colleges and universities come and do recruitment and outreach and talk to them about what it would be like to go to college. The social issues on the reservation, we as a community are trying to combat those all the time. We're trying to get activities, prevention workshops out to the community and to youth populations. So we have our summer youth program that's coming up, our summer opportunities program that accepts youth from 14 to 24 years of age, and we put them to work, get them work experience and some classroom trainings, and within the classroom trainings we go over the soft skills as well as like prevention training, and let them know about the fentanyl issues and what it could do to your body. And so we go over that, as well as vaping, the harms of vaping, and the harms of alcohol abuse. And we bring in, work with our Four Directions program called Cedar House Treatment Center, and they come in and talk about their testimonials of what drugs and alcohol have done to them in their lives and how they've changed and moving in a new direction. So hopefully those are inspirational stories to not use, and just to keep going on with school or training and live productive lives. There's so many good things happening that I don't think gets enough coverage. We have lots of students getting great grades in school, from K through 12 as well as college. We have a student that just graduated as a valedictorian from IIA, Institute of American Indian Arts. So we're really excited to have him as one of our keynote address speakers. So at the end of every year, we have a res-wide graduation ceremony for all of our graduates, and he's going to be one of our speakers.
I asked Jessica what is unique about the Shoshone-Bannock people.
Oh, wow. Our people are known for a lot of really cool things at the Shoshone-Bannock tribes. Our beadwork, our relay races, our hand games, our basketball tournaments. So somebody knows somebody that's associated with Fort Hall in any of those realms. So yeah, we have a big festival every year. The second weekend in August happens, where we get a lot of visitors from all over the country and out of the country as well. A lot of people don't know that Shoshone and Bannock are two separate tribes. They just think it's one tribe. And so we always are constantly educating people that there's two separate tribes, we have two separate languages, different customs, traditions. Just know like the basics. And that's what we try to teach our summer youth when they come through our training summer program. Is in our classroom trainings, we try to teach them some language and culture and share stories, creation stories. They also learn about the government, tribal government, how that works historically and contemporary. We also talk to them about learning our histories, legends, stories, creation stories, so that they know who they are as Native people, because that is not always taught in the public school systems. And the majority of our youth attend school off the reservation. So it's important that when we do have a captive audience of them coming through our summer programs, we try to do as much education as we can with them.
That is a slice of our Indigenous world. For all the latest, visit ictnews.org. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.